Madam Chair. Thank you.
I call Dr. Duncan Webb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak to Supplementary Order Paper 156 of Mr Stuart Smith, and as he's pointed out, the government doesn't support that. That's not to say that what was done in Kaikoura was not a good innovation. However, the fact is that it's not necessarily a wise thing to ossify that into legislation. What we do need, because this is essentially an operational matter, and we know that one of the good principles of legislative design is legislation the only remedy? And the fact of the matter is that that's not the case. And it's a much better idea to take an approach which says let's continually innovate with ways in which we can best deliver the service of EQC to homeowners. And whilst this has been used in Kaikoura, there are still other innovations that EQC is undertaking. The Greater Christchurch Claims Resolution Service is another example of trying something new that seems to be working. So look, as Mr Smith pointed out, this bill is simply making some straightforward changes that were easy to do, very obvious, and that's what we're doing here. An amendment like this brings in a new complexity. I mean, for example, it automatically and by default appoints an insurer as an agent of EQC, whether or not there's another agreement in place. Now, we can't make an insurer agree, so that it would be a real concern to go down that road. So, look, yes, some good improvements in the Kaikoura model, but not appropriate to put in this piece of legislation. The protocol in Kaikoura was itself renegotiated recently. That can happen again and again. And it must be remembered that there are a number of different insurers with different capacities. And what might be appropriate to negotiate with IAG might not be appropriate with a much smaller insurer. So we need to have an insurer-by-insurer approach. And again, we need to make sure that what we're putting in place doesn't have unintended consequences, and if it needs to be adjusted or unwound, we can do that. And once it's in legislation, that wouldn't be the case. So yes, the government will consider what has happened in Kaikoura in the review being undertaken by Dame Sylvia Cartwright, and that is where that should really take place. So yes, it's been useful in the Kaikoura earthquake, but no, it's not an appropriate place to put that into this legislation, to essentially fix it in place, stop any improvements of it. Let's have a wider look about how EQC works and make sure that if we're making these changes, there aren't any unintended consequences. And that's the next piece of work, to make sure we have the best possible insurance and EQC response for the next event. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I call the Honourable Nicky Wagner.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.